So let's get started. We're looking at some more common compliance issues facing the residential construction industry. These issues are not confined to Western Australia. They are national issues affecting those who have management and control of the workplace. And in the case of Western Australia, that will be the main contractor. In other regions of Australia, they're referred to as a principal contractor. But these also affect contractors both directly and indirectly. So let's take a quick look at what these issues are, and most of you should be familiar with them. Just one important note before we go into the detail. For those of you who are builders today, it's worth noting that in QR codes, either individually or collectively, firstly, OH&S management plans required where 5 or more persons are working or are likely to be working a copy of that plan. And also, a copy of the plan is required to be available for inspection until the construction work is completed. Now, evidence of the contractor's employees having acknowledged this or cited it is available. Another option we quite commonly see nationally is a hard copy is placed in a tube. Problem there is, again, no verification that it has been acknowledged or cited by anybody. And of course, if weather's a problem, then chances, if it's lost, it needs replacing. And if it's updated, it needs replacing. In terms of site safety inductions, these are used to provide site-specific information such as emergency procedures, rules, hazards, and the OS&H management plan were applicable. They are also required to assist in meeting your requirements in Section 19 information relative to the site. The traditional solution that we find quite often, and again, not limited to Western Australia, is there may be nothing at all. Sometimes it's unless it's a large site with a supervisor on site pretty much full time, or having to have preset induction times. Again, not practical due to the variable arrival time with no evidence of attendance or participation, and you're unlikely to capture all the contractors and their employees, particularly where Section 19 of the Act, it is necessary that you provide consultation with employees and box talk, where people gather around and have a chat about a particular item, and there's an exchange of information both ways. Traditionally, we find that either nothing at all happens, or when discussions do occur, there is no record of what was discussed, nor is there any record of those who participated with those inductions. Incident reports, absolutely critical when it comes to reporting of incidents that have occurred on site. Now, it isn't necessarily where an injury has resulted. It may be that there was a near hit or property damage. This provides for capturing of the general information concerning the event, including any identifying contributing factors, and thereby the required action to take to prevent a recurrence. And this is quite often when such an incident occurs, particularly where it's a mandatory. And these then provide the basis for more detailed ongoing incident investigation. Now, traditionally what we find is that quite often, unfortunately, sometimes nothing at all is done, and no record is kept of the information concerning the incident. The requirements are not standardised, therefore you may capture some information with one incident. In terms of hazard identification and risk assessments, this is the fundamental, and that's the identification of hazards, assessment and reduction of their risks. Sometimes a visual assessment does occur, but there's no structural process to that. In terms of swims, that does occur, not all the time, but specifically they are legally required for high-risk construction work, which brings us to the next topic. Safe work method statements and JSAs, often confused, but they are two distinctly different things. Safe work method statements, or SWMs, as they're referred to, are required by the regulations when undertaking any of the 19 defined high-risk construction work activities. JSAs, job safety analysis, or as they're sometimes called, job safety and environmental analysis, provides a means by which you can demonstrate your endeavours develop to review the work steps and associated hazards, and to put in place the correct solutions to eliminate or minimise those risks or hazards. Now, it sounds very similar to a SWM in terms of its content, because they are very, very similar. The traditional solution we find, generally, often signed off by the participants, and generally they're generic in nature. They are required, however, to be site-specific. Quite often we find that they are not available on site, as is required, and also there's no structured risk which provides a more definitive outcome with regard to the actual risks in relation to that job. JSAs, quite often, again, an actual risk assessment process. In the case of the main contractor, for those of you who are builders, and in the case of before, so they're nothing new, and they're commonly used in a variety of apps, as long as they're fitted with a QR code reader app. Some newer devices actually come standard with the QR code reader, which makes life a lot easier for those people who aren't too good at downloading apps and the like on their phones. Now, once scanned, the QR code opens to what would best be described as a page, the contents of which use. It contains text and images, interactive fields, with the aim of creating a friendly and fluid user experience. And some of the particular features of the QR codes: submitted, it goes to a nominated email address that is provided, and that lists if they wish to receive a copy themselves, or there may be a situation where you're working on a job for a client who may have their own safety requirements and who may wish to receive things such as hazard reports. It also therefore allows you to put in their email address and send them a copy so that you both receive in a PDF form. The QR codes also facilitate the image uploads to support any incident reports, hazard notifications. So where we get around that is a field that includes for a job number or site address, whereas and there are provision for codes so that specific questions that must be answered have to be answered, otherwise the form cannot be submitted. The QR codes can also include links to relevant guidance materials, such as what is required for safe work provided to their own cloud-based document folder, such as Dropbox. Except in the case of a landing page, which I'll describe soon, the page provides access to multiple fields or multiple forms, then you get 10 labels for that landing page only. And you also are provided with the graphics file of the QR code, so if you wish to print that on personnel, and their details in terms of mobile phone numbers and also critical reports of the QR code's usage when it is reassigned, and also at the end of the subscription period, which I'll go into in more detail shortly. So let's take a look at some of the other applications in addition to those that we've already discussed. Work involving tools or equipment that produce flammable or combustible conditions such as welding, grinding or cutting. We also have mobile plant and equipment in a pre-start check. Quite often businesses require some evidence that there is or has been a check done at the mobile plant, equipment or even motor vehicles, requiring rectification, and those items can be risk scored. Standard operating procedures. Standard operating procedures are a document that includes the hazards. It also includes the steps to be taken prior to use of that particular item of equipment. So that QR code allows for the uploading and viewing and acknowledgement of the client, or purchased separately from us. They can be loaded up into your own Dropbox or similar folder so that the QR code provides access to those. In terms of site establishment and a pre-commencement checklist, this facilitates an assessment of the site prior to the actual commencement on site, so it actually forms part of the burns such as asbestos fencing, asbestos roofing. There might be contaminated landfill on the site. There might be OTIS form. Now, all of these forms can be customised to suit your particular requirements. And again, the response from that information, and it can then be put to one side, filed away with that particular job as evidence that a risk assessment of that site prior to commencement has been undertaken. Site inspection. Site is actually operational, so the frequency of which would be determined by the particular business. But again, as part of your, depending on the site, the nature of the site, the risks associated with that site. But again, you're taking that monitoring, as was mentioned briefly before, was to your requirements. So the standard templates that we provide are generic in nature, but they are and also your own particular requirements can be facilitated if there are any particular needs that you have, so long as they're within the scope of the software program, and they can be discussed at a later stage. Business-specific applications can also be a QR code that we use within HIA Safety. So what does a form actually look like? So above are some examples of screenshots from what screens look like when opened. And on the enables me to add at any stage you might consider necessary down the track. So quite often people are very keen to say look at the site induction QR code, but then later on they might decide that possibly because of the nature of the job, or maybe the client has requested a process by which they can be advised. And so these additional buttons, some of you here today might be familiar with the particular, may have missed it, and these are quite commonly seen in a lot of other industries as well for different reasons. And on the bottom of that, or the middle left-hand side of that site induction QR code site sign, for those of you who may not have used it, that provision for the user to email people has been provided, and it's been very successful to facilitate one QR code to be used nationally to facilitate a range or an unlimited number of people to receive that particular notification advising that they have undertaken that COVID-19 Australia and of course in Western Australia. This particular site to be unique to the pages previously outlined. The third example is of a South Australian builder who has opted, as was mentioned previously, you can either have a generic QR code which enables the user to enter in the non-specific QR code. So this sign to me, and I upload it, in this case not to, and the beauty there is that by having a site-specific QR code, they receive an email of that particular job, and the assigned QR code number, they have a record or a table outlining which QR code number relates to which job. And so as they receive the emails, they know exactly what site that relates to. And where it also comes in handy is that where a trade or a contractor is expected to be on site on a given day, and they are required as part of your procedure. If you have not received, or the nominated person has not received site yet, have they forgotten to undertake the things a little bit difficult, and in which case quite often the build detail, so it doesn't matter what or whose phone is used. The QR code is a subscription product over a 12-month period. To make things simpler for everybody, what we've done is we've created a number of profiles, and these profiles are all the same cost. So whether it's a QR code to undertake risk assessments and hazard identification, they are all the one cost. Now the cost structure is based on a single QR code being for a 12-month subscription is $1.25 a day. So that works out roughly, including GST, to about $456 for 1 year. Now, at the end of the day, if you find that having used it, it's not what you were looking for, then the QR code is just simply taken offline, and you don't gain access to it any further. If, however, you'd like to continue using the QR code, then we send you out another subscription form, and then the subscription continues. If you then go to a third and subsequent QR code, that goes at the same time. So unfortunately, if you elect to purchase a single QR code today, and then in 6 to 9 months' time, you then decide to buy another one, then regrettably, you will be charged that thing. So it's certainly better value. Your needs are in the early stages of discussions, so that you can maximise that cost benefit. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I hope I wasn't too rushed. 20 minutes doesn't leave a lot of time to go into a lot of details, so that concludes our webinar for today. And I'd like to